To travel. In all of life, there are few things better. To set foot and walk somewhere strange and new. To see, hear, smell, and feel the delights of a foreign place, previously familiar only in the cinema of our imaginations. To transport yourself to a land not your home, and to adopt it for a day, a week, a month as your own. To search and plan and wring your hands on where to go, or to spontaneously disappear, together or alone. To a place where you can be yourself and someone completely beyond the life you own. I love to travel. Because when we travel, we grow closer to those we thought couldn't possibly get nearer, and remember life's delights that are so easy to forget at home. That glass of wine we shared, the way the breeze felt when we walked together there. We love to travel. Who could have ever imagined life without it? Who could have thought of closed doors and closed borders? Grounded planes and grounded plans. Dreams delayed. Business disrupted. We felt it on all fronts, at all levels, across our communities and our lives. But as the shadow of uncertainty continues to stretch out before us, we look beyond the horizon to a future waiting to be born. Guided by 25 years of experience, commitment, and insight, having weathered crises big and small, knowing the resilience of our partners, and understanding the undeniable human need of travel, we have set a simple goal: accelerate the rebuilding of our industry. At heart, we are people who are passionate about travel and passionate about the partnerships that make travel possible for everyone. We are looking to the future, where the work of our people can be part of your recovery, where together we start to reimagine growth, where we work to reconnect customers who want to find new ways back to travel and exploration. We will adapt and support each other in partnership we care about as much as we care about growing your business. A partnership we earn. A partnership based on trust. A partnership we reimagine together. That is our commitment. Because the world will wake up and a new day will dawn. And just over that bright horizon live people we miss, places we've yet to explore. In the not so distant future, when the conditions are right and our communities are safe, travelers everywhere will once again look to us all to open those closed doors, lift windows into new vistas, and find them new friends while bringing them close to old ones. The world will travel again. And we'll be ready.
We're back from our studio for the last day of Click 2021. We're 2 days in and we have already unpacked many topics and had many conversations, all to help us reimagine how we look at growth. So can you give us a sense of what we have already covered, Eamon?
I can. First of all, it is so good to be back. Day 3 in the studio for the third show that we have today. And I've seen many of you sharing your thoughts with us on social media. So Marit, here's my download so far. We have talked indicators, we have talked macro themes. We've then taken a look at partnerships, really about value creation. And then we've also really had a chance to look at topics that are driving a thriving marketplace.
And what about our online demand content?
Well, yesterday, of course, we had the 21 session release, so there was a lot. And we had a session really focused on our technology partners who are continuing to focus on facilitating the connection. And of course, those kitchen sessions happened yesterday.
Yes.
Well, of course, that was an opportunity to highlight products, programs, and all of that great advice for rebuilding. And of course, throughout all, we continue to talk about travel and travellers, because that is absolutely at the heart of what we do and enable as a travel industry.
Yeah, and we're not stopping yet. Today, we're starting to bring in regional perspective and what growth looks like. And in addition, Eamon got a chance to sit down and hear from Martinique Lewis, and you told me this was quite inspiring.
Well, you don't want to miss this conversation. She really got me thinking about where the opportunity is for our industry. And that is not all we have in store for you. Once again, that on-demand library again will be populated with more content. We have our Let's Go regional sessions today. That's where our regional leaders are all about helping you move from insight to action. Now, I know some of you have been seeking even more content after these sessions, and I want to tell you we are ready. So our partner connectivity and partnerships hubs are always being populated with great resources. So I suggest you start making these a daily destination. And we have our Click magazine, and that's now published in 30 languages.
Wow.
In addition, it's also designed for easy content sharing. So take a look at partner.booking.com. Now, I think we should get back to the conversations.
As one of the largest traveler and travel markets in the world, the US offers great future rebuilding potential, and the sister brands of Booking.com are focused on making this a reality. We asked leaders from these brands to share more on this and how together these brands are looking at reimagining growth.
Hi, I'm Rob Ransom with Booking Holdings, and thank you for joining us today. We're here to talk about one of the largest and most dynamic travel markets in the world, the US market. As I think you know, Booking Holdings operates a diverse collection of global travel brands, from Booking.com to Priceline to Kayak to Agoda, Rentalcars.com, and OpenTable. These brands collectively serve hundreds of millions of customers with their travel needs across a broad set of geographies and experiences. Now, each brand has its own management and structure, but we frequently work together, especially in the US market, to help our partners reach this diverse set of audiences and travelers. So today, I'd like to welcome three of my colleagues who are leaders of our brands and our businesses, especially here in the United States. So welcome to Todd, Brett, and Steve. Brett, I'm going to start with you. A couple of questions just to get going here. First, how long have you been CEO of Priceline? And maybe just a little bit for the audience, what's unique about Priceline's proposition to both travelers and to travel suppliers?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. Hey, everybody. It's great to be here and to talk about the industry. I've been the CEO of Priceline for 5 years. I've actually been at the company for over 20. We launched back in 1998, and we had a very specific mission, which was to help our partners fill excess capacity and to give our consumers a great discounted price without harming the integrity of the partners' retail prices. You know, at the time, our consumers knew us as name your own price, but today, flash forward 20 years, we've got a number of different products and services that help consumers really get a great deal, whether it's on a flight, a car, a hotel, a vacation package. We've developed some really interesting technology to help consumers bundle just about anything they want to bundle, and to have opaque products that deliver really great discounts to our customers. On the partner side, you know, Priceline is really an expert at filling this excess inventory that I mentioned. And our opaque and packaged products really are the key to helping them do that. And for the partner, it gives you a very powerful and tactical promotional tool to really ramp up your demand by filling key gaps in your markets or your booking windows. We also cater specifically to last-minute bookers. These bookers are almost exclusively leisure. They don't do any advanced planning. And that means they're very flexible and they're open to trying new brands. And these customers are largely incremental to our partners because they're very hard for them to attract. And so we bring that value to our partners.
Well, that's great, Brett. And it's interesting, over, as you mentioned, 2 decades for Priceline. Now, a lot has changed in the business and the industry in 2 decades, but it sounds like the core mission really hasn't, which is delivering great deals to travelers and helping partners connect with those travelers who are looking for those deals. So
That's right, and even more important now during COVID and during that recovery period that's coming up.
absolutely. Okay, I'm going to shift over to you, Steve. Steve, CEO of Kayak. For those that may not be familiar with Kayak, maybe as a user, but as a business model, tell us a little bit about how Kayak works.
Sure. I hope everyone's used Kayak. If you haven't, you should. Unlike our sister brands at Booking.com and Priceline, we're not an online travel agency. What we really do is we're a meta search site, which means we search on consumers' behalf hundreds of other travel sites to give them a complete picture of their booking options. And then once they've found the itinerary that they're interested in buying, we give them choice on where to buy that, either from one of our sister brands or a competing brand like Expedia, or even supplier direct. So we work across everyone in the industry, mainly with an eye towards helping consumers, but also making sure that we deliver that consumer into the booking path the way that a supplier or an online travel agency wants to serve them.
Yeah, so that's very helpful to understand the difference between Meta and a traditional online travel agent. Now, Todd, over to you. Now, Todd, you're with Booking.com, but you also play an important role in the U.S. market, helping make sure that our brands are working together and coordinating on behalf of partners wherever it makes sense. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And first, hi, everyone. It's nice to join you at another Click event. I know it's not quite like Click events of the past, but it's great to be here and great to have some time with you today. And I do, Rob, to your point, look after Booking.com's U.S. business, but also do play a role in working with Brett, working with Steve, working with John, who couldn't join us today from Agoda, to see how we can really unlock growth in the U.S. market together and bring incremental value to both partners as well as consumers. And so, to your question, we do operate separate brands. I think it's really important to reiterate that point. And Rob, you said that at the intro, which is, I think, very valuable, is that we do operate separate brands. But in my almost 10 years of being at the company, we are now more than ever looking at ways that we can work together and partner to bring incremental value to partners. And so just to underpin it with an example, Brett mentioned up front, Priceline does a really great job with deals, and they do a really good job at really taking advantage of this last minute demand that's coming to the platform. And so we bring some interesting rate types that serve that demand well. And so sharing those rates with Priceline to make sure that partners get the full reach, get the full value from the rates that they provide to Booking.com is an example of how we work together differently than we have in the past. So knowledge sharing, rate sharing, inventory sharing, all with the intention of bringing incremental value to our partners in the market.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's a great balance. And I know we work hard at it to have, like you said, collaborate where possible, but at the same time, have different propositions, the ability to have different audiences, reach different audiences with different offers and different, across of our brands. It's not just a universal storefront with a different skin, for example. It's the ability to differentiate. So that's one of the unique pieces of it. So, Brett, I want to come back to you. You mentioned, obviously, the disruption of the pandemic last year and the tragedy. If we focus a minute on the travel business, obviously, the pandemic brought in a lot of changes last year. What are those things that you think, the changes that we saw in the last year or so, that you think will last beyond the pandemic? Are there other things that you think are going to return more to normal, or at least normal as we knew it back before COVID?
Sure, absolutely. Once we came out of the first month or two of the pandemic, as people started to work more from home, we saw a significant jump in mobile behavior. We were already strong from a mobile share perspective, but this really took it to a level that, essentially we're dealing now with almost an exclusive mobile-only world. And I think that's going to stay. Even as people begin to trickle back into offices and work, mobile will still be the center where most of the travel transactions take place. The second is, I think, AP window compression. People are continuing to plan less in advance, and they really want to book these things almost real time while on the road. And finally, people want more flexibility. I think that expectation really grew this year. And I think as our partners start to think about what types of changes they'll make looking forward, having more flexibility is going to be a good thing for consumers and will cause them, I think, to book more and travel more. And then the things that are going to return, clearly leisure is going to return in abundance. And that's going to happen, we believe, later this year at great scale. And I think it will surprise us how much travel is going to take place in that space. The second I would say is big cities. Big cities are taking a big knock right now. And everyone wants to talk about all the travel taking place out of big cities. But the minute these restrictions start to lift, there will be an outpouring back into, or an inpouring back into these big cities. So two trends I think we'll see that return very quickly from a leisure perspective.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And we'll talk in a minute more about the big wave and when that's going to come, because I think that's important for everyone on this call. Todd, how does that jibe with what you're seeing at Booking.com, some of the trends that Brett mentioned there?
Yeah, real similar. And, I guess the data sources I'd refer to, some are just, patterns and behaviors we're seeing on our site, but we've also been doing some surveys of the market to get sentiment from customers. And Brett, mentioned the first point I'd say, and that is, there is a bit of a shift from popular urban destinations to smaller regional, kind of closer to home destinations. And 60% of travelers that we polled in a survey told us that they are just uncomfortable going to some certain destinations at this time. So that's short term. We do see a tremendous amount of pent-up demand for international travel. And I guess that's an obvious, that's something that wouldn't be a surprise. But the amount of consumers that we see on the site that are searching, looking for, exploring international destinations is an all-time high. So a real spike of customers really looking to say, how do I get back to international travel when I can get back to international travel? So that's something that it's exciting to see. And then business travel, it's depressed. It's going to stay depressed for a while, and so it all comes back to then how do you backfill that lost occupancy with leisure travel as leisure travel starts to come back. And so I think it's a short-term impact, but one that needs to be considered a little bit longer term as we look to the recovery. So those are changes, but there are some travel norms returning. And so we do see some things like, customers are still cost conscious. They're looking for deals. And 50% of our customers say that they think that this is a good time to travel and get a deal. And so deals matter. Driving destinations, we talked about local, but people are looking to drive to a destination. If they can get there by a car, they're going to go there by a car. And that's 67% of folks telling us that on the platform. And then we believe the last thing that we think that I'll share here that's maybe a little bit different or unique is that we really do believe that young travelers will help lead the return, and then that'll get followed by families. And so thinking about ways to reach the demographic of young travelers and thinking about ways to get after families is going to be an important part of how we all collectively get back to travel.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And there's quite a lot of complexity there in just what you mentioned, but the domestic, the different demographic segments, whether folks are going to stay closer to home or like that desire to get back, both traveling internationally as well. So a lot to think about when travel starts to return.
Yes.
Steve, a question for you. In a year, like we had last year when travel demand was so down and depressed, ironically, that sometimes creates opportunity for innovation or product innovation or business innovation. Can you tell us a little bit what Kayak has done during this time of lower demand?
Sure. So look, unlike our sister brands, we don't have to worry about transactions or customer support. And unlike our business partners who actually operate hotels or fly planes, we don't have to deal with those logistics either. So that's actually enabled us to just think about the consumer website in the app and then our business model with regard to our partners like the online travel agencies. So we've had a tremendous amount of innovation through the course of the year. So the Kayak that people use today when they're ready to come back and travel looks very different than what it did at the start of 2020. So for example, we disclosed COVID-19 cleaning policies in each of our travel partners. We have a filter for cancellation and refund policies. We suggest alternative locations and destinations for people to go to. So there's a lot of innovation on the consumer side. On the supplier or business partner side, the biggest change we made in 2020 was to align our economics interests with those of our business partners. It used to be that when a consumer would visit Kayak, we would refer them off to a third party to actually consume their or consummate their transaction, and we got paid based on the referral. So by providing the lead, not the actual sale. We changed that in COVID to actually make sure that we got paid only when our business partner got paid, given the high rate of cancellations. So I think that business model change was a tough one system-wise for us, but it was the right thing to do for the industry, and it will survive post-pandemic.
No, that is a big shift, but it's important to align the interests, as you said. How have you seen partners respond to that change so far?
I think it was a very welcome change from everyone in the industry, and that we had to do the engineering work. It was a very heavy load for Kayak and for other metasearch channels. So others like Trivago, et cetera, have copied that model. But what I think it actually enables is coming out of this, we have a very tight partnership, both with suppliers and with online travel agencies, so that we know that when a transaction happens, it gets flowed all the way back to Kayak. And if there's a cancellation, that gets flowed back to Kayak. And it means that we can unlock a lot more personalization going down the roads.
So I wanted to turn and ask maybe each of you a couple of questions. I think Brett mentioned it earlier, but we're all anticipating and starting to see early signs of a big return to travel. There's a lot of pent-up demand, not only in the United States, but all over the world for leisure travel. People have not been able to travel or not been able to travel in the way they want or the places they want for much of the last year. So we're seeing that's going to come back. And as you all know, at Booking Holdings, we've talked a lot about how do we make sure that we're prepared as a business to support those travelers when that demand is able to come back and start booking. So a question for you all is, if you're giving advice to our partners, whether it's accommodation partners or flights or other, what's the something you would, advice you would share to say, hey, let's make sure that you're prepared to take advantage of that demand when it does come back? Brett, why don't I start with you?
Sure. Well, during the last year, almost all of you have extended your cancellation policies and have made it very easy for people to book and then make changes when necessary. There will be a temptation to immediately remove those as travel starts to return. My advice is keep those in place. That is absolutely stimulating incremental travel for this industry. And if you keep it in place, it will push it much faster than you even are budgeting. We're going to see a real inflow of travel. And if the policies stay in place, people are going to book and travel. And then the second is, we've got great promotional tools in our group of brands. Work with us to fill the types of geographies or AP booking windows that you need filled. Work with us. We'll help you to drive even more demand to your platforms.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Steve, what about you? What advice do you have?
I would definitely echo Brett's comment about extending the cancellation policies to make those as generous as possible, because that's really important to consumers. We see it in our numbers. The other thing I would plea with you is be ready for that demand, because we want that initial travel to be a pleasant experience. So make sure your staffing level's there, make sure your service levels are great. And I think the most important thing is don't gouge on price. Keep the price relative to the value of the service that you're providing, so that consumers leave your property or your airplane with a great taste in their mouths and they want to come back and be loyal.
In a year that's been challenging on revenue for everybody, but recognize there's going to be multiple trips here. This is not just a one-time return to travel. So that's great advice. Todd, what about you? What thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I think, the good news story here is I'd say that, in some cases travel is back. And so, a couple things that I'd say where it is back is it's oftentimes local, so more local than usual. And so make sure you're optimized for local. We see people that are searching for travel within the same state they live or an adjoining state. Brett's right on with flexible policies. Steve's right on with pricing. Make sure the pricing's in order, the policies are in order. You're optimized for local, you're optimized for mobile. And then the good news story that I'd share is we're seeing an all-time high of unique site visitors. People are coming and looking they can't wait to get back to travel. And so it's part of our responsibility to help them get back to travel. And so the one unique thing I'd add is customers are telling us they want to make sure they're going to places that are safe. So if you have measures that you've put in place, policies that you've implemented around safety and health and hygiene, tell people, because they need to know that. That will help the folks that aren't traveling start making those steps back to travel, and that's going to help the industry and help us all.
There's a common theme here. It's that we know that people want to get back traveling, so let's do what we can to make it easy for everybody to do that. Now, one last question for everyone, and you can make this quick. Now, besides leading travel businesses, you all are travelers yourselves. So when you're able to travel again for leisure, what's the one thing you're looking forward to being able to do again? Brett?
Not wearing a mask. I've flown a number of times over the last 6 months, and wearing a mask while flying for 8 hours is not happy. And the second is eating out. I had my first restaurant meal a week ago. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to have someone actually make that for me and serve that to me. It was outstanding. So I'm looking forward to more of those.
Yeah, that's great. Todd, what about you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I live in Seattle, but I was born in Canada, and so currently I can't get across the border to go to my favorite ski town on the planet, which is Whistler. And so I just can't wait to get across that border and get up on the snow and ski at Whistler again. That's going to be fantastic. That
sounds amazing. I hear the snow is great this year, so hopefully you can get there.
Unfortunately, the snow is great this year, yes.
Yeah. And Steve, what about you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I live in Miami Beach, and here the restaurants are open, and everyone's traveling into Miami Beach as a result. So I'm looking forward to leaving this town and actually going to visit some of our offices overseas and seeing my colleagues face to face again, because I sure miss it.
No, those are all great wishes, and hopefully this year in 2021 we'll all get a chance to make that real. So anyway, I want to thank you all for your time and for sharing your insights and thoughts, and thank you all to our guests for joining us today. Hopefully you got some more insights in the U.S. market and thoughts about how to drive the business forward. And again, thank you for your time, and I wish everyone great business this year. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We heard some encouraging signals from that conversation. I also heard some strong advice coming through. Flexibility continues to be reinforced in the conversation, and being ready for demand from an experience perspective also is coming through as important. It's all about thinking of your customers for the long term. Plus, many optimization opportunities were covered, whether that was for local travelers, mobile, or delivering that relevant customer information. Above all, I continue to get confidence that travel is starting to re-emerge in new ways. And in places where we see travel as not possible, people are certainly starting to search and discover. So the time to look forward is now. So we want you to share with us pictures of your experience and tell us how you are ready to welcome back travelers using that hashtag #Click2021. Of course, through your favorite social channels.
It's time to continue, so let's welcome back Ripsi Bendurian. She connected with the regional leadership of Booking.com, but first we have our final traveler community story, so let's take a look.
When it comes to taking a trip, we all want to let go, learn something new, expand our thinking, and explore new destinations. However, none of this is possible if the destination we end up in is not accessible for physical and neurodiverse travelers. There is still so much stigma around neurodiversity that much of this community stays home rather than asking for facilities that they would need. For travelers with diverse physical needs, getting the basics right with high contrast signage, accessible movement in a wheelchair throughout the property, and allowing service animals are key. If accommodation or transportation partners go through the rewarding work of making their offering more accessible, the next step is to make sure that work is clear to potential travelers. As for your own website, make sure it's accessible and informative. Add facilities and amenities that make choosing you easier. Train staff on why each facility exists and who uses it and how, so they can explain accessible facilities to guests and be on hand to help if needed. These steps might seem overwhelming. However, implementing any of these steps goes a long way. Depending on your own accessibility journey, pick one of the 3 areas we share to focus on and take action today. Be able.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session on day 3 of Click 2021 in the live broadcast. I had the pleasure of joining you yesterday already, where we spoke a lot about how we at Booking.com are investing in our partnerships. And over the last few days, you've heard a lot about how the consumer behavior regarding travel is changing. It wouldn't have been possible for it not to change, given the year that we've just all experienced together. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Stuart from APAC, Andrea from EMEA, and Bob from the Americas to talk to you about the insights and opportunities that we see in our regions as we operate in a very global environment. Let's get going. Stuart, I'd love to start with you. What are some general insights that you would love to share with our audience today from APAC?
Thanks, Ripsy, and hi, everybody. Just before I get going, I just want to encourage you all to check out the Let's Go APAC session, which is coming up soon, where Nuno and Anthony will be giving you a little bit more color on the market. But let me start from a sort of higher level. APAC, incredibly large and diverse region, and a market which for us is the most reliant on inbound travel. But of course, with all borders closed, we're seeing very little of that. But in markets where domestic travel is big, such as Australia and Taiwan, we are seeing pretty good volumes. And in some markets, we're actually up on 2019 volumes. We see now, and we continue to see, or will continue to see going forward, a number of variables that will impact both the domestic and international demand. Firstly, there's the rise and fall of cases, country by country. There's how willing a country is going to be to open its borders and by when. We didn't see in APAC what we saw in Europe last summer, and I do feel that APAC will have a much more conservative approach to opening up. And finally, there's the rollout of the vaccines, where countries are adopting different approaches and different timelines. But where we do see demand, the APAC booker is incredibly value conscious. And value doesn't end with price. It includes flexibility, options, and selection. And our flexible one-day policy is being well received in the region as it puts the user in full control. What we also saw during lockdown is that more people are aware of the impact that our actions are having on the planet. And we see users looking for more sustainable travel options. We think this trend will continue, and we're making big efforts in making it easier for people to book travel in a more sustainable way.
Thanks for sharing that, Stuart. Bob, anything that you would love to add from Americas, which of course is also a very diverse region?
Yes, it is, and I resonate very much with some of Stuart's points around Asia Pacific as well. So in the Americas, across North America and Latin America, we're not only a very diverse region, but we have various levels of travel restrictions that are really causing differences between the countries, especially down in Latin America. And across North America and Latin America, broad international travel restrictions are leading consumers to domestic travel more and more. And where we're seeing the greatest strength of this demand is in the United States and in Brazil and Mexico. Although broadly, we are seeing positive trends there. We also see a difference in the recovery with regards to properties that are open and actively operating. And certainly in parts of Latin America, they've been hit the hardest, the deepest, and it's lasting longer. And while the recovery might be a little bit slower in some of these countries, the silver lining here is that we do see a very consistent and positive trend taking place, which is really a great thing. Hoping that the worst is behind us here.
Thanks, Bob. And Andrea, do you have anything that you would love to add to these insights that we're hearing?
Yeah, Ripsy, we are still far from a recovery in EMEA, but lately we are tracking very early signs of encouraging summer booking trends, especially in Western Europe, namely in the UK and Germany. Although, of course, in each case, booking levels are still below where we were at the same point in 2019. So the good news here is that whenever there is an announcement or even just hopes about restrictions being softened, we can see that people are very keen to book, even if mainly flexible policies for the moment, but I think that is quite understandable.
Thanks for sharing that, Andrea. And given a very diverse response and diverse insights that we see globally, I'd love to hear from you again about what opportunities we see in EMEA in 2021.
In the shorter term, we will have to focus on reigniting and capturing any demand that we will hopefully see in the coming months while the situation improves and the restrictions are gradually lifted. At the same time, we'll keep investing on longer-term objectives, such as expanding our customer base. In this respect, even the focus we will have on other geographies, such as the US, will benefit our region, as it will increase inbound from outside on top of intra-European travel that has always been our core strength. We will have as a priority to deliver as much value as possible to our customers in every part of their trip. And we want to do this to make sure that people increase the willingness and frequency of travel with benefits for the whole ecosystem. Last but not least, we have, of course, a commitment to deliver the highest value to our partners, even more than in the past, especially in regards with some critical areas such as marketing, payments, products, data, and tooling, just to name a few.
And given the value that we're delivering to partners, Andrea, would you be able to share with us any findings? I think there's been a recent study published by E&Y in Europe, sponsored by Booking.com.
Yeah, correct, Ripsy. It found that 80% of guests that use an online travel platform originate from outside an accommodations typical sourcing market. This means that platforms like us are helping customers find properties that otherwise would not have found. I briefly mentioned payments. The same study found that 76% of accommodation providers state that prepayment and pre-authorization options of an online travel platform help to reduce cancellations and no-shows. So in this way, we're also securing more revenue. I suggest you stay tuned for the Let's Go EMEA session that will start after the live broadcast, where our directors in the region will share more about this and other relevant topics.
Thanks for that, Andrea. And Stuart, off to you. Would love to hear from you also on opportunities that you see in 2021 for APAC.
Well, I think here in APAC, we will be focusing on capturing the domestic demand. Now, if the market for international opens up, we might extend that focus, but certainly not at the risk of dropping the ball on domestic. Our flexible policies are working well, so we'll continue with those, as we'll continue also to work on removing the friction from the customer experience. And we'll extend our reach by acknowledging the demand that exists for the more off the beaten track locations. And we'll be working with new partners for those destinations.
Thanks, Stuart. Hearing lots of kind of big opportunities in APAC as well. And Bob, off to you. Any opportunities you would love to highlight for 2021 for Americas?
Sure. I think, our strategy is founded in really, I think, a comment that Glenn made in his opening, which is that there's just this incredible pent-up demand for travel around the world. And what we know from history is that travel will be back, and we believe it'll be back stronger than ever. And so part of our strategy is that we will be creating greater demand by offering greater value, as we've heard from both Stuart and Andrea. And this includes the connected trip, which is the accommodation, its flights, its transportation, and its tractions. And in the Americas, our investment here starts with the US and the US Booker, because we know we have a tremendous opportunity here, and the US Booker travels all across the Americas and across the world to benefit. The US, speaking of the US, it's a market where we believe we've been under-indexed in, and it's an area where we'll be focusing on product investment here to benefit us on the journey together, both through the pandemic and post-pandemic.
And that's actually a perfect segue, Bob, and I'd love to stay with you. Could you please share with us what are some products and programs that our partners should expect to see from Booking.com in 2021?
Sure, I'd love to expand on it, and also be sure to join the Let's Go Americas session to even dive deeper into the regional specifics of our offerings. Our investments in product and programs starts with listening to our partners and their needs, both now to get through the recovery and post-recovery. And we complement that with extensive research that we've done on travel trends for the upcoming period as well. And for travelers, as we've heard, value matters, and value more than ever is something that travelers are looking for, and in our case, in the form of packages or pricing options. And so you should expect that we'll continue to invest and expand our offerings around Genius, around mobile rates, around localized deals and opportunities, as well as investing in local market data and intelligence to better inform what travelers are looking for. We'll provide more visibility opportunities by expanding our preferred option, as well as we're in the process of testing out a merchandising platform, or travel ads, as it's commonly known. We're also incredibly excited that we've extended and expanded our payments platform into the region, now live in the US and Canada and Mexico. We look forward to further expansion throughout this year and next as well. And as you've heard, the level of collaboration across the Booking Holdings brands and group of companies is being amplified to bring greater value and greater choice to our partners and our guests. And we think our investments here are going to start realizing benefit this year as well. So pretty exciting times.
Thanks for that, Bob. And off to you, Andrea. Any programs and products that our partners in EMEA should be expecting in 2021?
Yeah, Ripsy partners have the right data to take the best decisions for their own business, as there is no one-fits-all solution, I think. I would expect that given the state of the industry, partners would evaluate and consider especially those products and programs that might encourage demand, giving some extra value and incentive to customers to book, whether that is related to better rates or to more flexibility, and ideally both, of course.
Thanks for that, Andrea. And Stuart, anything you would love to add for Asia in particular, APAC?
Yeah, sure, just a couple of quick things, Ripsy. One, we want to ensure that our partners are set up for success through the Partner Recovery Toolkit, where they can implement flexible policies in just a few clicks. And secondly, we know that travelers are increasingly looking to stay in a single place for longer. So we'll make it easier for our partners to implement weekly and monthly rate plans to accommodate this demand.
Thanks for sharing that, Stuart. And in reality, I'm incredibly optimistic about 2021. I hear themes around innovation that's very much rooted in diverse needs that our partners have, and themes around payments and value, both for our partners, but also for our consumers. Thanks for sharing that. But in the end, we're all passionate about travel. We all work in travel and are very much connected to the industry that we're in. I have a question for you that's more of a personal nature. Bob, I'd love to start off with you. What is the travel moment that you're most looking forward to in 2021?
Yeah, the pandemic's been great for us. My family and I have done quite a number of road trips during this past year. But I came into this role in my current position just a few months before the pandemic hit. And I haven't had a chance to get out and meet my team and meet our partners. And so I'm super excited about that opportunity once the restrictions lift.
Thanks, Bob. Andrea?
Yeah, I'm really missing airports as I used to travel every single week before COVID. So first thing would be to take my family on a plane to somewhere nice, probably in Europe first, and then somewhere very far. Maybe I'm going to visit my friends here in Singapore and Seattle. Who knows?
Thanks. And Stuart, now that you're welcoming Andrea in Singapore?
Yeah, well, Andrea is, of course, very welcome. But for me, thanks to the pandemic, I haven't been able to see my daughter for about 6 months. And we have a kind of father-daughter thing that we do, which is to ski. So as soon as possible, she and I will be on top of a mountain somewhere with skis strapped to our feet.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, I shared mine yesterday and it's unchanged, but I will again. It's very much about connecting. For me, my husband and I, we've been living away from family for quite some time, and we would love to see our children connect with their grandparents and sit in an armchair and read a story together with them. But it's also very much connecting with our colleagues and our partners. I'm very much looking forward to getting out there and be with the teams, but also be meeting with our partners in real life. thank you very much for your insights and the information that you've shared with us today. And everyone who's listening, please join the Let's Go sessions. They will be very informative and very targeted to the individual regions. Thanks, everyone.
The team at Click thought long and hard about the perfect guest to not only inspire us, but truly give us reason to reimagine our futures industry. As you now soon will hear, the importance of representation for all travelers has never been more relevant. And I know Eamon jumped at the chance to have the conversation with our next guest.
Now, I know it has been an epic 3 days of content, and it is not over yet. No. So my next guest and I had the opportunity to participate in a panel together a few months ago. And when I was on that panel, I thought, I know that I want to talk with her more into the future. Martinique Lewis is an award-winning diversity and travel consultant. She is the creative lead for Nomadness Travel Tribe, president of the Black Travel Alliance, and if that is not enough, she is the creator of the ABC Travel Green Book. She describes herself as a digital disruptor who, as you will quickly find out, has an immense love of travel and is out there changing the narrative for travelers that represent different demographics. She is on a mission to change the face of tourism forever. I want you to join me in welcoming down the line Martinique Lewis. Good morning, Marty. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for your kind words and thank you for having me.
It is so nice to have you streaming in live. Of course, it would have been nice to have you here in person, but I want to get into it because there's so much that I want to cover with you during the time we have together. But maybe if I start right back at the beginning, where did it all begin in travel for you, Marty?
Yes, I think just my whole life, I have been in love with travel, and having a grandmother who was an immigrant who came to America, that really helped weave just my travel story, but even more so a mother who always made sure we were traveling and would take us overseas in the summers and would make sure that that we were just global citizens and that the world was really our classroom, really helped just change our perspective. But we kept that same love of travel just going out through the years. And I studied abroad initially and then working in the fashion industry and realizing that I didn't want to work in it anymore. I moved over to the travel industry, and that is how I got here.
Now, I remember when we sat on that panel that you talked about the travel gene that you had and that you really wanted to get out there. When do you think you realized that it would become more of a life mission?
Yeah, I would say just about 4 years ago, as an avid traveler who was always traveling, I just was tired of never seeing myself reflected. And when I say myself, I just mean as a Black person, not necessarily as a woman, just as a Black person. There was a lack of representation in the industry. And I understood really how much I was spending and how much my counterparts were spending, or how much my friends were spending, how much my siblings were spending. And that was like right at the height of this social media craze that travel communities had started to be birthed. And the Black travel community was just growing so vastly. And you would start seeing Black people in all these different places. But because of social media, it allowed us to connect with each other. So now realizing that we're able to have this space where you can communicate with somebody through a picture, not necessarily because you speak the same language, but through a picture, and you're showing each other love and you're supporting each other. That's what moved me into wanting to be more a part of this community. And so that's when I started officially in the travel industry just about 4 years ago.
Okay, so you're in the travel industry. Where's the moment that you take the step in and you take the action to start addressing what you were seeing?
Yeah, I was working for a company called Black Travel Journey. At the time, again, advocating for Black travelers, trying to make sure that we were seen, trying to make sure campaigns were more inclusive. And we went to something called the Women in Travel Summit, and it's by a company called She's Wonderful. And while I was there, again, advocating for Black travelers, I realized that we weren't the only ones who felt unseen and unheard. I realized that Muslim travelers felt unseen and unheard. I realized the same for plus size travelers and even, autistic travelers who said, we can't go into restaurants that have flashing lights because we can have episodes, and who thinks about us when doing restaurant design? And that's when I really made up in my mind that I was going to advocate for all people because there were so many people who also felt like me.
So I can really see how you're able to take agency at a personal level. And, you know, if I read your bio, you use the terms advocate to describe yourself. How did you grow and organize so that you could kind of take more action at a community level?
Yeah, I think, of course, just through social media in general, there's so many different communities where you can meet different people. There's so many travel conferences where you can meet people. But I made up in my mind that I was going to leave my original space, which was the fashion space, and go ahead and move into travel by spending money for a year, traveling to different travel conferences like WTM, like ITB, where I knew C-level executives would be presenting. And I would sit in the front row, and when it was time to ask questions, I would ask all of them, what are you doing about diversity and inclusion within your brand so that you can reach inclusive communities, you know, whether it be online or through traditional media? And oftentimes either they didn't have an answer, they weren't sure of an answer, or they just simply admitted, we're not doing enough, we need to do more. And that was really the year, I would say 2018, when I basically spread my wings, because at the time I was one of the only people really trying to advocate for diversity and inclusion within this space.
Now, I said in my introduction that you are focused on changing the narrative for travelers that represent different demographics. That's a super large scope. So what changed for you to have broadened your scope? Because you were talking at big scope levels, which I love. Tell me what's driving that mission?
I would think just genuine human connection, right? I've met so many people who don't look like me, but who feel the same way that I feel, who have felt silenced for so long, who feel like they're constantly giving their accounts and nobody's listening. And because I know that I'm a very direct person, I'm very outspoken, and because now throughout the years, I've built this network of people who actually listen to what I say, then I make sure that I will always take in their feelings to account and make sure that I relay the information so that people are mindful of how they feel as well. You know, the traveler in a wheelchair, or the traveler, the plus size traveler who's like, every time I walk through a hotel door, I can't even just walk straight in. I have to turn to the side. So who's thinking about me when they're building this? And, you know, for some people, when they hear that, they're like, oh my God, it really is that simple to think. But until you bring the awareness around it, nobody is thinking about it. So I just wanted to make sure diversity and inclusion was top of mind all the time, from top to bottom.
Okay. So I can definitely see you sitting at the front row of some of those well-known conferences that we have out there. And I can really see your role, you know, as an advocate. Can you kind of unpack for viewers, because I'm sure there are viewers who are saying, I really want to be there as well, in terms of what else are you doing that really changes that narrative?
Yeah, so as a diversity and travel consultant, I do diversity and travel training, or diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So I can come in and do lunch and learns, which I do often, teach bias training, understanding just insights based off of research. I do campaigns. I make sure that there's like networking events where I can directly connect brands with content creators or journalists or travel influencers to make sure that that narrative is changed. I also will go in and do like an in-depth analysis where I grade companies or brands on certain things. And a lot of it is internal first. It has to start internally. You know, who are you hiring in your teams? Does it look reflective of who you want to attract into your business? It has been awesome for me, but of course, even after June, it's sped up a lot. It's been a lot more people who now are tapping into diversity, equity, and inclusion and wanting to know where to start and what to do next.
Yeah. And you're the anchor point in terms of how you can get started and take a look at your business. We've had a lot of that conversation happening over the last couple of days at Click. And, you know, we were quite disciplined in saying we really want Click to be about looking forward. Right? And so I'm curious, when you think about how travelers will emerge from the kind of restrictions that we're in of the pandemic, how do you think the travel experience will fundamentally change?
Yeah, so of course it will change because of safety due to COVID. I think a lot more people will be aware of things like where can we go? When we go, what do we have to do? When we're coming back, what do we have to do? And that's why I tell people, like, this next wave of travel, we're going to see like the rise of the travel influencers again, or the rise of the travel journalists, because everybody is looking to somebody who's already been in those places that they want to go to be able to ask these questions or answer these questions. Additionally, I think we'll see so much diversity and inclusion everywhere now because people are so much more mindful of it. So you'll start seeing campaigns of travelers that you never thought, but maybe even traveler that you weren't even aware of. Yes, the guy in the wheelchair wants to be able to still enjoy a penthouse suite. He doesn't just want a garden level room at the back of the hotel. So you might see some campaigns that start reflect that. You might see, a Muslim woman deep diving, in the ocean of Belize with her burkini on it. You might not have ever thought, oh, wow, Muslim women swim. Yes, like you see a lot of smashing of negative stereotypes when it comes to race and gender and age, and sexuality. So I think that travel will look very different in terms of media. I think travel will look very different in terms of mindfulness. So do you offer the halal menu? Does your menu have martinis on it because your destination or your brand is heavily, supported by Muslim travelers who spend $220 billion annually on travel? So we'll start to see some of those things taking place because people are more mindful.
If I get into kind of the heart and the mind of a traveler for a moment, do you think that the way we will prioritize different things when we travel will become different? Just a really interesting point of view there.
In terms of prioritize, yes. So for sure, like when we have these conversations amongst my family all the time, it's like, what are the COVID requirements and do they require anything? Some members of my family was like, well, we don't want to go there because you don't have to prove that you don't have COVID. You don't have to show a test. So I think we'll prioritize that. I think we'll definitely prioritize safety and cleaning. I think we will prioritize accessibility now because, and when I say that, I mean it in terms of how we're able to get to someplace because so many flights have stopped, right? So are we gonna want to still go to our dream destination if it takes us 4 different legs to get there? Or are we gonna go somewhere that only has a direct flight and for a good price? So I think those things are the type of things that we would prioritize.
Yeah, we've had a lot of different discussions around it, particularly with different guests. Also, part of your role, and you talked about it earlier, is around consultant to tourism boards and travel brands. I'm super interested in how you convince brands and businesses to authentically stand up for something. I'm really interested. Maybe it's your secret sauce, Marty, but I'm curious what it is.
Well, most of the time when brands come to me, it's because they realize that they need to change something. So I don't really have to do as much convincing. But prior to June of 2020, I did have to do so much convincing. And part of the way I would do it was through social media numbers and engagement. So if a brand didn't have, for example, any type of representation and speakers at a travel conference, I say, well, let's look at your travel conference numbers. How many people do you have that look like me? And they would say, exactly, nobody. And I was like, but what would make us come when we don't see ourselves reflected in your speaker lineup? Why would we come if your topics don't necessarily apply to us? So really, it was just making brands see the value in numbers for one, and the value of actual money, right? How much these individual niches are spending. If I tell you, the African American community spends 109.4 billion a year, why would you not want some of that? So it's just like, if I have to convince you of that, then you're not worthy of those people's dollars anyways, because that alone should make you realize, oh, we need to tap into this community so we can get a piece of this pie. So that's what I would have to do. I would have to bring them numbers, because at the end of the day, figures are everything. People wanted that research. People wanted that actual dollar value. And so that's how I used to have to persuade people.
Yeah. Well, you give me hope that people are knocking on your door wanting to really authentically stand for something. So let's take that for a moment. I'm also thinking around advisory, right? And you're doing a lot of that advisory piece. Do you think that's changing, or do you think your advisory is changing, or, what elements are staying the same when you're working with businesses actively?
Yeah, I think more businesses want some type of advising, and it is changing based off the different conversations you're about to have. So even I was talking to a brand today and they were talking about a Juneteenth campaign. And I was so shocked because prior to last June, nobody really even knew what Juneteenth was if you were outside of the African American community. So in America, Juneteenth is when Black people basically became free. This is when the emancipation actually went into like full effect, where you didn't have to be slaves anymore. So for a tourism board to say, oh, this is how we're celebrating it, for me, I was like, whoa, this is so interesting, because now there's new dates that pop up, right? That brands are even more so mindful about, just for every single community. Like, oh, this is something that Indian travelers celebrate. How are we going to celebrate this in our destination for anybody who's coming here? So I just think that dates are even something to be more mindful of in terms of celebrations of actual cultures.
Yeah. Now, you're in one of those unique positions, right? Because you work with lots of different businesses across the entire spectrum of the travel industry. And so maybe you talked about some of the changes you're observing. I'm curious, any other material changes that you see are happening in travel businesses and adapting. I guess I'm curious how they are adapting to think more broadly in their definition of customer, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, so there's a lot of research studies going on currently. So a lot of them are tapping into those research insights so they can better understand not only who their current customer is, but how to reach to different markets. So I see a lot of research studies being studied by these brands, being purchased and studied, which I'm really happy about, because this information, is out there for some reason. And then I'm seeing more people hiring freelance help because they may not necessarily have the budget due to COVID to hire somebody full time, but they are bringing on people specifically for DE&I. And before there wasn't, there wasn't an actual department for that, but now they're hiring people so that they can start from the inside outward.
I leave with energy with this. And so thank you so much for sharing what has driven you to your present role. And it's clear to me
Absolutely.
that as kind of you and your mission has evolved and you have achieved the goals, kind of the range and that ambition of your purpose has only increased. So I'm going to ask you maybe a tough question, maybe an easy question. How would you describe your purpose now?
Ooh. My purpose is still the same thing, to change the face of tourism forever. And I don't think that's ever going to change, because we can all constantly evolve depending on, what our different positions are. And so, yeah, my purpose is to raise that brand awareness. My purpose is to continue to present information, research, and findings, and to continue advocating for people.
Well, if ever I was going to have a guest that helps us truly look forward, I couldn't think of a better one than you. Your mission and your purpose, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Personally, I find it super energizing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Marty, thank you so much, and nice to have you with us. Look, personally, I have felt this conversation has been a rallying cry for all of us. Our traveling customer base is not going to be different. They always have been different. This moment is not just about resetting and reimagining. It is also about us creating the foundations for the right representation and ensuring everyone sees themselves reflected in the pleasure of travel. Thank you.
Well, and look at Eamon, he's back with a magic change of clothes.
Just a quick change.
Really? We promised this was going to be energetic, and that delivered. And with that, we're at the end of our conversation and our studio show. A lot has been covered, don't you think, Eamon? Yeah, definitely. And in a few moments, there will be over 36 on-demand sessions and topics available to watch, including the sessions from our studio shows. Over the days, we've covered macro trends, specific product updates, we've heard about partnership plans, and also from industry experts. So dedicate some time to explore your personal library of inspiration and information. It's nearing time for us to once again hand over and hand back to the regional teams. Join us for the Let's Go sessions, where we will focus on sharing regional insights and recap the big takeaways. Then stay for a live interactive Q&A. But before we say goodbye, we must recognize the efforts that go into creating an event like this.
Yeah, we absolutely must, and I want to give everyone an idea. Our cameras have been filming for over 3 weeks. We have cast and crew from all over the world, connecting all over the world. And we have crews who every day ensure we can connect and bring our content to you. And most of all, they have done this following above industry standard health and safety protocols.
And of course, we want to recognize you, our traveler community. We want to thank you for your engagement. And remember, it's not over yet. But for the last time from our Click studio here in Amsterdam, thank you and see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.